Hello, friends! I am so excited to be here discussing source filter theory and resonance with you. Now, this PowerPoint is a little different than the ordinary source filter theory presentation because it revolves around one of my favorite movies, Legally Blonde. So this is as described by Elle Woods and me, Kelly. So, our objective for this video will be to understand how a sound is produced, beginning with a fundamental frequency being generated in the vocal cords and ending with formants. Now, here's Elle saying, what? Like it's hard? Because we totally can do this. By the end of this video, we will practically be Harvard graduates of this objective. To begin to understand resonance and how it relates to the vocal tract, we need to discuss important characteristics of the vocal tract. To begin, the vocal tract is a quarter wave resonator. This means that there is only one opening to the system, which is important as we study the airflow of our system. The vocal tract is also a series of air-filled containers. This is really important because it means that air is going to flow through them and change as it gets to each container. The vocal tract also has a very irregular shape. All of these air-filled containers are super weirdly shaped. They aren't just rectangles, folks. They are weird. But this weirdness is important because it makes it a broad-ranged resonator. A broad-ranged resonator means that it will vibrate at many frequencies around its resonating frequency. This is important for us because it means that the spaces in our tract will vibrate lots of different frequencies rather than one tiny specific one. The last characteristic of the vocal tract is the one that I think is the hardest to grasp, but the most important. It can change shape and is thus a variable resonator. When we move our articulators, the entire shape of our vocal tract changes. Thus, the vocal tract is a variable resonator. This means that the resonating frequency changes as the vocal tract changes shape. So when we move our articulators, the resonating frequency of each of our cavities in the vocal tract changes. Keep in mind while we go through that sound changes in the vocal tract like Elle changes throughout the movie. She goes from sorority president to lawyer. As mentioned before, the vocal tract itself is a variable resonator, but it has three cavities within it that work as resonators. These cavities are the pharyngeal, the oral, and the nasal. To escape SLP jargon, these are your upper throat area, your mouth, and the space in your nose. These cavities are where resonance happens, just like events in Elle's life where she changed. She started law school, she became a serious student, and she won her big case. These events shaped her, just like resonating cavities shape our speech sounds. Speaking of our speech sounds, an important concept to understand as we move forward is fundamental frequency. After we gather the energy to create sound, we begin to create pressure in our glottis and cause the vocal folds to vibrate. If you could pinpoint the sound that is just made here, it sounds like a low buzzing sound. This is probably the only sound that goes through Warner's head. Just kidding. But fundamental frequency sounds like this because it has not been amplified through resonation yet. It's a lot like Elle before she goes to law school. It hasn't been shaped yet. But the sound will be changed, shaped, and amplified as it travels through our vocal tract. This is what will lead us to formants. Now remember from the beginning of this video that the vocal tract is a variable resonator. It changes shape and thus changes resonating frequency. This means that when you move an articulator, the diameter of a cavity changes so the resonant frequency changes. Extending a certain cavity will result in a lower frequency, for example. Also, as they travel through recall that the vocal tract is a broad-range resonator. Thus, many frequencies will be amplified as they travel through these cavities. So, as the sound goes through the cavities, resonant frequencies result that are called formants. Think about how L changed throughout the movie. Each different L is like a formant. Okay, let's start putting this all together. Sound, a vibration, travels through our vocal tract changing within resonating cavities. It changes to formants, and these depend on the shape of each cavity. Then, formant 3 is what is produced at our lips and is the speech product. Sound changes. It does not necessarily bend or snap, but if that's how you need to picture it, go ahead. So now that we've put it all together, let's put it into practice. As Elle says, exercise gives you endorphins. To begin, let's talk about the sound. Make the sound and really think about where your lips and other articulators are. On this slide, I provided a side view of the vocal tract. All of these diagrams are from Ferran's book. I also included the schwa sound so that it is easier to see the cavity shapes by comparison. For the sound, we see that the tongue is semi-raised. It's not laying flat, the mandible isn't lowered, but it's not raised either. This lengthens the pharyngeal cavity, but not too much. This will give us F1. Next, consider the tongue. This gives us F2 as sound travels through the oral cavity. Finally, the sound is nasal, so the sound travels through the nasal cavity. It is a large cavity. As we can see from the schwa, not all sounds are affected by the nasal cavity, so this is important for the M sound. We can see on this slide that vowels are much different from the sound. The sound has lots of obstacles, while vowels have fewer. Here we see the E sound. It has a really high tongue compared to the and to the schwa. This creates a longer pharyngeal cavity, which lowers the sound for F1. Also remember that the E is a front vowel, making the oral cavity shorter and making F2 higher. Finally, the lips are open, creating another change in the formant that is produced at our lips. We did it! We made it through the entire vocal tract as a sound. We discussed the source filter theory and resonance. We saw how sound changes with resonance just like L changes in law school. We are now graduates of this video. Congrats! Here is a list of my photo credits. Thank you!